Welcome to Keep Hustling, where we are going past the why to get to the how. I'm your host, the always hustling Aaron Gordon, aka NY Risk Advisor, aka Mr. Keep Hustling. In this podcast, we will be diving deep into the professional and personal successes of our guests to find out how they hustled through the most difficult times in their life and their development to achieve the success they've gotten to today. So buckle up for what hopes to be an amazing ride. Let's get to it. Welcome to Keep Hustling with my guest, Adrian Taskin. Adrian, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I am so excited that you're here because you probably know that I'm a big follower of yours on social. I love what you guys do, your company. And if there's anything that I think embodies what you do every single day, it's hustle. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So take us back. What do you need to know about your upbringing that inspired your insane hustle that we have today?
Well, again, there's a lot of pivotal moments over time, but I would say, so I guess we'll get to that fork in the road moment, but pretty normal upbringing. I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I have two siblings. Both my parents have been together their whole life. I'm a Russian Jewish background. Grew up upper middle class, went through high school, went through college, was an athlete in school. You know, pretty basic, very, very good upbringing. And my life was pretty normal up until a certain point. And that certain point for me was probably around high school where, you know, there's a saying where people peak in high school type of thing, right? I always had a very easy time making friends. I was always with the cool crowd, had a lot of girls. And that was pretty much my identity. It was partying, it was having a good time. I didn't really care much for academics, although I did well academically with pretty much given the most minimal effort possible. In other words, if I applied myself a little bit more in academics, I think I would have did very, very good. My sister graduated top of her class. She's in a big marketing firm right now. My brother's an attorney, so they went the traditional scholarly route. I went more school of hard knocks.
So, were your parents more corporate? Like, did you grow up in a corporate environment?
Not at all. My parents are immigrants from the former Soviet republics. My mom did graduate high school. She did go to nursing school. Then she had me, and that was the end of that. My father, he's one of those, and I'm sure you've seen him on video before. He's just that old school, bald Russian guy that, sometimes pop, don't say that type of thing, right? Old school mentality, tough as iron. Came here when he was 15 years old, worked a taxi cab, didn't finish high school. And then just like in any culture, you have certain people that kind of go into one way. He followed that route, and that was taxis. And then from taxi driver, went into the jewelry business. So he first started off as a jeweler. And I know this is supposed to be about me, but talking about my father is actually a big part of my story. So that's why.
For sure. No, for sure.
That's why it's very important. So he was behind the bench jeweler. And if anybody knows what that is, that means you are an actual jeweler and you're working with the metal and you're doing all types of things I'm not going to get into.
Hands are black.
Yeah. But he has two left hands. In other words, that was not for him. He's still unable to screw in a light bulb. So it all came down to this. So he came from zero and came up really fast in the jewelry business. In the 80s, early 80s was very, very easy to make money during that time. Gold boom, diamond boom. The drug business was a big part of it, right? It's just what it was, right? The 80s. He had a pawn shop in Atlantic City at 19 years old, made a ton of money, lost it all gambling, came back and forth, lost it all, came back and forth, and then he became a jeweler. Fast forward, he met my mother, had me. My upbringing was pretty good. So in regards to being corporate, absolutely not. My dad still does the same thing he does today from what he did 40 years ago. And that was day in, day out. What is this worth? I'm going to sell for this. And that's the extent of that. And that's where I kind of helped take his business to the next level, which we can get into in a little bit.
Yeah, but I think that's amazing because your siblings went, I guess saw that, right? Yeah. And said, we see that life, the constant hustle, for lack of a better term. There's a different grind when you're in a business like yours and like his was and is, and when you're in a corporate job. So I just find it interesting that you kind of followed in his footsteps of what you saw. Like you saw that and that inspired you to go to the school of hard knocks, for lack of a better term, like you said. And yet your siblings, which is very common, kind of took a different route. So it's fascinating to me that you took that. And I wonder if you can pinpoint what spoke to you about following in those footsteps.
I think what it boils down to is your personality and your identity. So if you want to compare and contrast me and my siblings, I am the biggest risk taker out of them. I like adventures. I don't like to know exactly what's going to happen tomorrow. In other words, they were more about school, corporate. They knew what was coming next. They liked the security of having a job and having a paycheck. For me, that was never my thing. Climbing the corporate ladder and doing all that. Even though when I look back on it now, I think I probably would have done pretty well in finance or at some type of firm and worked my way up, because I think I've showed it in business, harboring relationships and working ridiculously hard. But again, I didn't. So through high school, I could never figure out what it really was that I wanted. My brother had a pretty clear picture that he wanted to be an attorney because a lot of his friends' parents were attorneys, and he saw they made very good money, and it was a safe, secure job. It was a respectful job, obviously, to be an attorney. So he went that route. He knew immediately where he was going. But for me, it was like, I just want to make a ton of money. Here's what I'm going to do. My whole thing was, seeing the Godfathers and the Scarfaces and the rappers and the bling bling, and that always spoke to me for some reason. For him, it didn't, and I drew that parallel with my father and those type of people. Even though my father's not in the mafia per se, right? But that hustler mentality, driving the Benzes, that was my thing. Well, you couldn't really draw a line between that and school, so I partied.
Right.
And I partied a little bit too hard. Again, my mind was in girls, was in partying. And from there came a moment where I got into some trouble, got into a lot of trouble. And early on, which was good. So around 20 years old, I had a moment, I had this like aha moment where I was like, I had this burning desire and this emptiness in my heart to change myself. So a lot of people that and looking back over time, the most successful people that I run across, yes, they hustle, but it seems like they hustle out of a sense of need instead of out of a sense of want. So I needed to escape this. I was almost possessed. I was obsessed with escaping that feeling that I had, that emptiness, that being lost. I didn't know where my life was heading. I was 20 years old. I completely screwed college up. And then I found work at this place called Luxury Bazaar. And Roman, who's actually the CEO of the company and the founder, was friends with my father. They were poker buddies. Now, Roman is a little bit younger than my father. He's 48 years old. My father's turning 60. So during that time, I got a job with him. And my dad's like, Adrian, just go work here. I don't give a shit what you do. We got to change your life. And at that point, I was just pushing spreadsheets and mopping the floors, anything that I needed to do just to kind of get myself in sync. Fast forward 13 years, the rest is history. I found myself in sales, and it just completely took over my life. It was me running, I would say, running away from that feeling that I had, that hopelessness. Found a purpose, found an identity within myself, and here we are. So you can look at it as a gift and a curse, because ever since I found that identity, ever since I found that chase that I needed, that hustle, whatever word you want to use, it's a blessing and a curse because I can never get out of it. It's not a destination for me. Like, success is just not a destination. It's almost like a direction, so to speak.
100%. I grew up. It's interesting. My father, he should rest in peace, passed away this past April,
Sorry.
and he started our business on December 2nd, 1968. So he was basically here for 55 years. And people would marvel at him. He was also sales at heart. Operations is okay, but sales pays the bills. Until almost his last day in the business, he would have hustled for $500 in revenue, and
Yep.
he was just that kind of. And I think that there is something to that, and I think that is a way, as you said, there's need and there's want, and I think that people who realize that they need that, I think it's incredible. As I'm listening to your story, that you realize that there was almost this like inherent interior need for that rush, that internal need for a rush. And you could get a rush from a lot of places. You could get a rush from
Yeah.
legal things and illegal things, drugs and not drugs, gambling and gambling in casinos, and gambling and hustling watches and luxury goods. And I think that finding that, I don't think it's disconnected from your upbringing, because I think that the same thing with school. It wasn't for you, but you hustled through it. You weren't going to fail, right? You weren't going to fail out of school, right?
There was no failing.
You know what I'm saying? But it was like you found a way to hustle that through. And then when it came to your professional life, so what was it like when you started? You do only watches or all luxury? Mostly watches, right? Yeah.
Watches, just primarily
Right.
watches,
Right.
watches on the jewelry side of things. But I mean, now as my career progressed, I I'm in real estate development as well, but that's a side hustle. But almost anything at this point, I feel like I don't have too many hustles because I'm a firm believer in putting all my eggs into one basket, which is the business I'm in right now. Because I just don't have the bandwidth to really do too many other things. I know a lot of people, they kind of are able to multitask and do this, that, and the third, but we're solely focused on a goal and a mission right now. We have a few very exciting things that we're working on right now, and hopefully that we will accomplish. So my full focus and all my energy is tied to that. I'm married and I have a baby girl at home, and the most difficult thing for me is finding balance within that because if I didn't have my wife and my daughter, I would probably sleep in this office that you're seeing right now
Me
because
too.
that's just how it is, and I enjoy it. I get a great sense of satisfaction from it. I have a great sense of purpose from it because it's just I love to do it. I don't necessarily I love watches, but it's not my passion. My passion is working out, golf, a couple other things. My passion is not watches. There are some people that really into the nitty gritty of the horological components of watches and the history, and they really geek out. I don't really care that much. I like watches; they're nice, like Patek, Rolex, the whole thing. I like the idea of watches and why people buy them for themselves, right? That's what that's what kind of hook, line, and sinker to me. And I liked in the beginning of how I was able to sell something to somebody that was very, very important. And the stories behind why people buy watches are very, very interesting. So that's the most passionate part about it. But my passion is out there. My passion is in competition. My passion is in growth. My passion is, right now I run a team of 8 sales guys here, and I'm very passionate about seeing them progress and get better. That's my ultimate vision, is having just the biggest and baddest elite team of watch dealers.
Is it hard for you sometimes to run a guy like you who literally has been hustling watches forever?
Yep.
How do you? This is a different angle of the hustle, but how do you reel that back and let your sales team run with their? I can imagine you've seen a negotiation or something, or watched the deal and been like, I could close this guy in a second, and we could. But yet you're trying to teach your salespeople how to evolve. So how do you
So I think,
position both those things?
yeah, so I don't work on commission or anything like that, right? I'm part owner in this company, and for me, I understand. So the worst thing that I've learned over time to really make your business something very important is to not be the bottleneck for the business. In other words, if the whole business relies on you, that's a problem. Your business is only work. Your business is not a business; it's a job. So once I realized that about 2 years ago, I said, "Hey, you know what? We need to build the sales force, and we have to come up with a system and teach people to run this business without us." Now, of course, there are a lot of important elements that myself or Roman do that the other guys cannot do. But the idea is to teach them. If you take any very important business, like let's take Amazon for example, and by just a disclosure, I am not comparing us to Amazon. The idea is that Jeff Bezos, he built this wonderful company, and he's no longer there at the helm, but the business runs on its own.
Right.
His spirit is there, whatever. He was the face, he is the face. But the idea is he's gone, and the company can run itself. That's when you realize the importance of the business, and that's when you realize, hey, if I can teach somebody to do what I did, which I am, I have 2 guys with me right now that in a matter of a year have learned a lot from me. We work very close together. They're always in my office, and we're sharing ideas with one another. I now have full confidence in them. I just pass them things. The more I can pass them, the more I can then go and grow into some other sector of the business. I can tackle on some other things because, again, it's evolving even within your own business, because I know people that have been doing what I've been doing for 30 years and they continue to do the same thing. My father being one of them, and that's actually a fear I have. I feel there's a lack of growth there if you continue to do the same thing over and over. If I look at myself in 5 years, if I looked at myself 5 years ago and saw where we are right now, I would be happy, right? If I look
So
5 years from now, yeah. So if you would have told me November 2018, hey, Adrian, where do you see yourself in this business in 5 years, or how your life panned out? And there was a crystal ball, and I could see where I am now. And if I could see that into the future, it would have brought me a great sense of joy.
how do you continue to evolve without losing that passion?
Well, that's a great question. One thing that I've never really focused on. This is going to sound crazy. I never set big goals for myself, because what I realized over time is that when I used to do that, well, one of two things can happen. Whether you achieve that goal or not, you create a conflict within yourself. Either you win or you won or you lost. So what I try to do is I try to tackle many little things that I know that I can control on a daily basis, and I've created systems for myself. Right. So those systems have built up over time, and that's where the growth really accelerated. And then when I look back, I'm like, oh, I really did accomplish that goal. Does that make sense?
So,
It's really, I
yeah,
know
no,
it's,
100%. But it's like if you didn't set the goals,
yeah,
and I guess what you're saying is if you didn't set those goals to evolve,
yeah,
you would have kept doing the same thing over and over again, which would have been a fine, probably a fine living for you,
yeah.
but you wouldn't have grown in that. But yet, by constantly setting those,
So obviously there's a general idea and direction of where I wanted to head, but if it was just chasing that, that could have created a lot of conflict, right? So I'll give you an example. I wanted a couple of years ago, I wanted to get to $100 million in revenue for the company, and myself, I wanted to do 35 million of that. Well, I hit that mark, but it wasn't me waking up saying I have to hit 35 million. It was me waking up saying, "Hey, here's what I have to do today. Here's a system that I have for myself that's going to get me through today to the best of my ability." And that compounded over time when I hit that 35 million. If I was constantly chasing, hey, I got to get 35 million this year, you would burn yourself out. So it's just small, realistic goals for the bigger picture.
but do you, and I assume that you would say that because you were able to hit those goals each day, it inspired you and motivated you to tackle the next goal.
Yeah.
The next
So
goal, meaning what I'm hearing you say is, and I'm not holding you to the numbers, right? But
yeah,
like making 35 $1 million sales every week of the year
yeah,
is better for your foundation than making one $35 million sale and just chasing ghosts the rest of the year. Because you're building that, and each time you're doing something, you feel like you're getting to the next step rather than
yeah.
leapfrogging to a place you don't know where you are.
Exactly. So it's almost like when Tom Brady, he's one of my favorite people in the world, even though I'm an Eagles fan.
I was
But
going
I
to say
read
you're
his
from
book.
Philly. Like, what is with
Yeah,
that?
but I like the idea of Tom Brady because he's that guy that was just a major underdog, 199th pick, not the most athletic guy. When he picked up that ball for the first time in the Patriots, he wasn't like, I want to win 7 Super Bowls. He's like, I'm going to do everything in my power today to get better. And that's really the idea, because I have a number in my head of where I want us to go or what I want us to sell for, but I'm not fixated on that number because that can drive you insane. But I know what I have to do tomorrow that's going to take me to that next step. It's little things that I can control, little habits, if I may say, that get me to that point. And that's one of the things that I install in my sales guys. I said, guys, we got to get into a flow of things. You have to know when you come in, you have to know exactly what's going on. You got to get into a rhythm. You got to get to a flow. That's going to really help you, because the worst thing you can do in sales is work at random and be all over the place.
Right.
Organization for me is a big thing. Execution. If there's one thing I may not be the smartest guy in the room. I am the most disciplined person that you know.
How did you find that from a life that seemed like, I assume that if someone saw you in school, in high school, they'd be like, this guy's not serious. This guy's not disciplined. So how did you find that, or it was just finding your calling?
So funny enough, I probably should have said this before. So what grounds me every day and what my real anchor is, and what actually started me before I got into business, was working out, was the gym. I found that the gym grounds me, gives me discipline. I eat healthier. I feel better. I guess I look better. And that was really, really the anchor for me to do everything else. So I wake up every day. My day, you can almost, other than this podcast we're having right now. So the reason that I really wanted to do this podcast was, if anything comes out of this, I hope somebody can just hear one little detail, one little thing that will be like an aha moment for them that they can connect with and take and do something with. Right. That was the reason I thought that, let this be like a therapy session for me, and maybe
Let's do
somebody
it.
will take something good out of it. So my day, five, I'm up. I'm out the door by 5:30. I'm at the gym by 5:45 because my gym is close. I'm back home at 7. Eat breakfast, shower, do whatever I have to do. Drive my little one to school, and from 8:30 to 6:30, I'm at the office. I have my whole day scheduled to the best of my ability. Obviously, we get sidetracked with different bull. I get home around 6:45. I try to spend about an hour and a half with the little one before she goes to sleep. Work a little bit more, go to sleep. I'm up again in the morning.
Do you get up at 5 on the weekends also?
I do, because my biological clock's already set. And I don't mind it. I like the morning. I feel like when I get up in the morning, I know I'm the first one up. I feel like I have that edge over everybody else around me. When it's cold in Philly and it's dark and it's 5 a.m. and I'm up, I know that the guy next to me is not. So that's kind of like a motivating thing. That's that discipline.
I love that. People tell me I'm crazy because I go to sleep early because I wake up early. Also, I'm up at try somewhere between 4:47, whatever, 5. You're right. When you walk out of your house in the morning, whatever you're going to do, and it's like that, you look around and there's nobody on the street, and you're starting your day. It's like I'm here to hustle. And by the way, at the end of the day, I might be exhausted, but I'm just
Yeah.
gonna now. I'm ready to go,
Yep.
and nothing a little caffeine can solve. So you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to go back. You said that because we like to focus in on a pivotal moment in a career.
Yep.
When did it click for you? When did it click for you? Obviously, you said when Roman gave you the chance and your father told you not to mess it up. But then you're mopping floors, right? So when did it click for you that like this is it and this is how I can get to my goals?
I would say a specific moment. I think that people start on a path to wherever they go in their life when, like I mentioned before, when they have just this emptiness in them to change and just to never have that feeling again. And I think it was a moment when I saw my parents crying, and yeah, it hit me. I was like, I'm a piece of shit. I'm this. I'm no good. I think it was that moment that, obviously, I made mistakes after that, but that was like the fork in the road where I'm like, I got to do something different here, and I no longer want to feel like this. So I created this identity within myself that I didn't want to be that guy anymore. And I'm lucky because it happened early for me, because I know a lot of guys that I was hanging out with died, to jail, and I made it out. And luckily it happened sooner than later, because as you know, as you're in that life and things progress, it's always harder to get out. So I got that very, very early, and by the grace of God. And that's one thing that I attribute to faith right there. I'm not a very I am a religious person, but I'm not very I don't practice a lot of religion. But that moment for me, that watershed moment, was like, why me? Why how come I'm so young, and I'm understanding this early? That was my edge. That was, I would almost say, what got me over everything else. It stopped right there and then, and I never looked back. I said, I want to be like my father. I want to be like Roman. I want to have a family. I want to have this. And as you grow over time, I did identify a lot of success and money with my like my personal worth. And I realized over time that also wasn't right. When you're in your 20s, you start making money. You say, hey, if I make $100,000 more, $50,000 more, $1 more, I'm more valuable than I was before. Well, I learned that also is not correct. That's also bull. But again, that's the growing process. But that mentality is what made me work hard, even if it was incorrect. As you progress in life, you get married, you have a child, that's out the window. My life is no longer mine.
Do you think, first of all, that's super powerful. Did you, when you saw your parents in that moment, did you feel like they had sacrificed so much and worked so hard and you were not living up to their expectations? Or because I'm led to believe that what's interesting or profound about what you just said, which none of my other guests have said, which is really incredible and a really deep insight, is that you were able to capture that moment. Meaning, in that moment, you felt it. It was not like you didn't look back 3 years later and say, like, oh, that's why I changed my life. In that moment, you said, the line is here and we're going to change. And
Yeah.
I think that that's incredible because what that means is, to me at least, you had to be kind of looking for it. Meaning you had to, the emptiness was there as you described. And then you were just hungry for that moment that would give you that push to execute the change.
Yeah, I guess the initial motivation was, as a son, to make my parents proud. But what I've learned is that if you look for external things like making your parents proud or making somebody else proud, it's only going to get you so far. Like, it could work, it could spark something. It's a good start. It's honorable, but it's almost like, you're the guy that quits smoking cigarettes. He said I'm going to do it for my family. He doesn't do it for his family. Or if he initially does, maybe he'll stop for a couple weeks or a month. He'll relapse eventually. Until you do it for yourself and really do it for yourself and want it. You cannot have external factors, will never ever drive you to that. I could say all day, I work so hard for my family. I work so hard for this. No, bull. You work so hard for yourself. The family is just the icing on the cake, right? But at the end of the day, if you didn't love it and it wasn't something inside of you, I call bull.
100%. And that's why I'm saying I feel like even though you said that that moment was when you saw your parents, it was really inside of you that you were like, I got to make this work. I got to make this change for me. And I would assume that you would as you've said, you built a life that you're probably much happier and more proud of at this point.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's it's for me, it's like my well being is more of like a path. It's more of like a direction than a destination, because as I've learned, as you grow in life, different things change. Your environment changes. You grow. Your mentality grows. People around you grow. So I don't look for like this aha moment where I'm gonna be, I'm satisfied. It's constant, gradual, different things. I work on myself. I work on my faith. I work on my fitness. I work on relationships with my family and my friends. And it's almost redundant. I keep a spreadsheet of that. As crazy as that sounds, but again, that goes back to that discipline that I have. I have to make sure that I hit all these things, and although that may seem a little like ridiculous, it makes me happy.
I think we would call that keep hustling. I think that we would call that just every little increment, and every time you check in that spreadsheet or that journal that you accomplished
Yep.
another day or another task that for someone else is small leads to
Yep.
your ultimate success. Wow, your story is amazing. I mean, your hustle. Anybody who we're going to put all your handles in the show notes. Anybody, you should follow Adrian and follow his company, just because I don't know about anybody else. When I follow what you guys are doing, I'm like, oh, I gotta make a phone call. I gotta do something. I gotta get out of my chair. So I appreciate you for inspiring me, and your story really kind of puts the framework of that, because that's really what it's about. It's about finding the right path and just staying on that path to see incredible success. So thank you for sharing that.
I feel like I just went through. I feel like a whole weight was left off my shoulder. I never really talked about this before
This is
in
great.
this detail. This is actually very inspiring for myself. Like I feel really good. I'm going to go kick some ass for sure.
That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to inspire others, and as you said, I think that people who listen to your story there will be young people that are listening to this eventually, and
I
they will
hope so.
hear your story, and they'll probably reach out to you. We apologize that your inbox is going to be flooded, but I know you want
Like,
that.
I love
So,
giving back. I don't like preaching to people. I just like kind of sending a little dart out there of something that would help me, because I know people have helped me in the past. Roman was a savior to me. So Roman, the relationship I have with him is like, if people watch our show, they'll see that we're cat and dog. Roman is what we like to call the cheerleader of the bunch, and I am what they like to call the poet. Not a pessimist, but I'm a realist, and Roman is the guy that's always too optimistic, and we clash heads. We had a huge fight 30 minutes before 30 minutes before this podcast. We were yelling at each other
but
about
that
something.
passion, right? But that passion is great.
Yeah,
That's what makes you want to come to the office every day, right? Is that you know
yin
that
and
there's
yang.
somebody there that's just as passionate as you.
It's that yin and yang, and once we come to this level, that's why our relationship is so successful. And with him, he was, there's my father, obviously, who's number one in my life. Well, my daughter's number one in my life. My wife always says I'm number three. It's Viv, my pops. Not really, but she always feels like she's in third place. But in reality, when somebody's your father, you look to them as an authority figure, and there's almost some things that you can't share with them just for that, just for the sake of, you think you're going to either disappoint them or they're going to judge you for it, and it's your dad. Roman for me was an older brother that I never had. Roman for me was the guy, and one of those actually fork in the road moments when I was making changes in my life after that whole situation with my parents. I was at his daughter's, his middle child's birthday of some sort, maybe 1, 2 years old. I forget what it was. And he came out there with his wife, his son, and her. And there was like this big event and everything. And when I saw that, when I saw him with his wife and his kids, I was like, that's what I want. He was also successful. He was older than me. We kind of looked alike. He drove the cars I liked. He wore the clothes I liked. So I'm like, that's the guy. And basically the rest is history. So I think it's very important. Actually, one thing I didn't mention in this whole thing was find a mentor. Find a mentor.
And I think it's important, not that your father, as you said, your wife thinks your father's number two, so he's ahead of Roman, but I think that it's important sometimes to find mentors that are not your parents, because you'll always have that click, like, oh, because it's my dad or because it's my mom, even though they want what's best for you. But if you have that guy who's like, you know, doesn't need to care about you, but does, that mentor that doesn't need to give you the time like a parent does, but
Yeah,
they do, I feel like that really helps
absolutely.
solidify the hustle. We have
Absolutely.
a closing tradition on this podcast that we ask our guests to leave us with their favorite current or lifetime inspirational quote. I know you're a big quote guy, so what do you got?
I'll just give you the basic thesis behind it. It was from a book I read, from Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. So the quote is, "You are the master of your destiny. You can influence, direct, and control your own environment. You can make your life what you want it to be." So in other words, what I took from that quote is everything that you do, everything that you think, every reaction you have, it's on you. And that's what I really got out of that quote. The moment you stop, it's basically taking responsibility for your own actions.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you sharing the open, honest, the story, your hustle. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel good. I needed coffee before this, but I don't need coffee right now. I'm about to go run through a wall.
Awesome. That's what we want to do. This has been Keep Hustling with my guest, Adrian Taskin. Remember, do well by doing good and always keep hustling. All right, hustlers, that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode. Thank you for listening. The listeners are the most important part of this show. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more listeners. Plus, be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. We have some amazing guests and topics lined up for you, and we don't want you to miss out. And finally, if you have any suggestions, comments, or even just want to say hello, please feel free to reach out to us on all social media platforms. We are Keep Hustling Pod on Instagram, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We would love to hear from you to continue the conversation. Thanks again for tuning in and supporting our podcast. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and keep hustling.